Hey everyone, it's Jody Sutter of the Sutter Company. It's Just Ask Jody live on LinkedIn Live. And today I'm in Toronto. I am truly live. I'm in Toronto with Leah Power, who is with the ICA. And today we are going to talk with Leah about, we're going to talk a lot of things, but mostly about this notion of thriving, helping agencies create a thriving workplace. And Leah, maybe I could just first turn to you and just tell us a little bit about your background and how long you've been with the ICA and what your mission is here.
Sure. So I was for about 20 years agency side, and I worked in finance and operations. So
a very important role.
That I thought it was an important role, but that was all the nitty gritty stuff in the background. I've worked in a number of different types of agencies, independent networks, small, big, Canada, US, across the country. And I've been at the ICA for just over 5 years. I had my anniversary in September. And you know, at the ICA, a lot of what I do, weirdly, is not finance and operations based at all. I rarely open up Excel spreadsheets, which makes all my finance friends very, very jealous. And a lot of the initiatives that I work on are really about, I distill it down to helping clients and agencies build better partnerships.
Yeah. So important.
Yeah.
And just to maybe take a step back for anyone who is joining us today, who maybe isn't in Canada, the ICA is the Institute of Canadian Agencies. And for those of us who are in the US, the 4As would be considered the equivalent to the ICA. And, we were talking, I know we want to get into another topic, but one of the things we were talking about before we went live is how agencies can and should be taking advantage of groups like the ICA, who are really here to serve you. And yes, your membership organizations.
Yes.
But and I encourage agencies to become a member of either the ICA or the 4As or the equivalent, because you get so much out of that type of peer-to-peer network. You get so much out of an organization like yours that really advocates for agencies.
I think that's the perfect word. That's what we do. We advocate and we work to create a positive business environment so that agencies can thrive. And we do that in a number of different ways. Just like the 4As, we negotiate the talent contract here in Canada. So that's one of the things. We work with government from a lobbying perspective. When you're thinking about marketing to kids and all of those great initiatives that crop up, both for clients and for agencies, we help with that. But I think it's about the advocacy for us. It's doing what we can and infiltrating those areas within the business environment that we can showcase agencies and advocate for them.
Yeah. Can I talk to you a little bit about business development for a moment?
Absolutely.
Don't derail the conversation. So one of the ways you guys advocate, there are a few things that ICA has done recently, maybe more recently than others, or maybe not so recently, but in the last few years that I really love, that you've set the tone so nicely. One of them has been Pitch Watchdog. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we don't call it Pitch Watchdog anymore. That's okay. We call it Pitch Watch. And part of the reason for that is because we've really gone global with that program.
Really?
And we have been working through the Voxcom umbrella, which is the umbrella kind of trade association for all of the agency associations around the globe. And it sits up there with the WFA, which is the World Federation of Advertisers. And we are working alongside them to really kind of focus on best practices. So we no longer call it Pitch Watch Dog. We took the dog out, but it really is about watching what's going on and making sure that we're creating, again, that environment where agencies can thrive. Now, agencies sometimes like to do things that's not great for themselves, but we look at RFPs and agency searches that go into the marketplace, and there are a few criteria where we kind of let our agencies know these are not best practices. And so Pitch Watch and our agency search guide, which is qualification-based selection.
The other thing I was going to talk
about. Go hand in hand. And how that kind of came about was we brought Pitch Watch here And that was the brainchild of Scott Knox, who is our president and CEO.
Hey, Scott.
And my first kind of issue with it or challenge with it was, hey, people just don't know any better.
Right.
So procurement's not bad, guys. Procurement's not bad. Marketers aren't bad. They just sometimes don't know. And especially if we're talking, it's a spectrum of where procurement sits on how, where they are. Are they maybe a little bit more tactical, or are they more strategic? And so I thought we needed a guide. So we've got Pitch Watch on one side and the guide on the other, saying these are the best practices. And Pitch Watch, really, our goal is that we work with the client to modify and amend their RFP or their search that's in market for the betterment of the industry. We don't want to be wasting resources of agencies, the industry, but more importantly, we want it to be efficient and effective for the client.
Yeah, I always talk about, and actually I'm going to do one thing. Would you just go up, sorry folks, a little bit of technical stuff. Just go up to comments to make sure that we have that open in case people are, so we can answer your questions.
Right.
I think that marketers don't, first of all, hiring an agency is risky. And that's what I often talk about with my clients. And it helps them see the marketer's perspective. When you can start to think about the time that it takes, the financial risk, the risk to reputation of hiring the wrong agency, and it's in their sincere best efforts to hire the best agency to make it as easy as possible on their team. And that's unfortunately often the result of badly written RFPs or selfish, or it seems like selfish requests. So I think if we can have someone like an ICA pushing back a little bit in a collaborative way, that's great. But the QBS, qualification-based selection, that, by the way, I would also recommend, whether you're in Canada or not, go to the ICA's website and download this guide. It's really terrific.
It is an all-encompassing guide. It was not created for agencies, so I will put that out there. It's created for the people who run the search, so procurement, or if you're a lone marketer and you're like, I've never done this before, that's the guide for you. If you're an agency, or if you just want to take a quick peek at it, I believe that as soon as you go onto our home banner, it's the QBS principles. And I've just listed those 12 principles that we think are the nuggets of qualification-based selection. That if you just implement those things, I think you're going to have an efficient and effective search. And really, the way I look at agency search, because you're trying to find your partner, you're trying to find someone, you're trying to find an expert service provider that can work with you and your team. And it's akin to hiring a knowledge worker through an HR process.
Right.
And so you have to really think of it in the same way, right? You've got to bring some humanity to it. And if you just want to buy pencils, a commodity-based RFP is fine. But if you want to, really work with a partner who's going to take you to the next level and really affect that financial growth for your brand, you need to look at the process a little bit differently.
What was useful for me looking at that document, as sort of thinking more on the agency side, is that while it is written for marketers, or the people who hire agencies, as an agency, by sort of witnessing or reading how this is being positioned to marketers, I think it gives the agencies the ability to understand that maybe they don't have to jump through an unreasonable hoop, or to understand why a really well formed case study is just as good, if not better, than spec work. Because a lot of that was in reaction to spec work, right? Or the requests for spec work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we're one of the only businesses that really do.
That still does it. And back to that word advocate, absolutely Pitch Watch was created so that the ICA could advocate on behalf of agencies, right? We have broad shoulders.
Yeah.
We corroborate the story. If someone anonymously puts in a tip and says, I've got this RFP, there are, these couple of issues, we corroborate it and we will take that on. But it warms my heart when I know that I've given the knowledge and the confidence for an agency to advocate for themselves.
Right.
And, to me, advocating for yourself is not, I'm not talking about bashing them over the head with information, but what an opportunity for a conversation. And in every new business and organic new business, it's all about conversations.
Yeah.
You want to get to that place where you're speaking to each other on a human level. The more you live in the grids and mandatory, questions of an RFP, the further
Right.
you're away from partnership.
Yeah. I also just want to emphasize here, because I agree, advocating for yourself does not mean writing or submitting something twice as long because you have more to say. It means pushing back intelligently. It means collaborating. It means asking questions. We were actually talking about this yesterday evening, this idea of a dance, like a tango, where one person is the leader and yet that other person, the second dancer, who's the follower, is still offering feedback and pushing back when they need to. And that, I think, is really an important thing. That dance of any sales situation is a dance, and an agency pitch is a sales situation.
I love that analogy, because even the person who is leading the dance, they want to look great and they want their partner to look great.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing I hadn't really thought about. Yeah. Yeah. I remember once, this is a little bit of an aside, one of my first bosses, he was a great boss. And he told me once, and this is sort of like the agency, I think you can apply this to agency client a little bit. And he said to me, your job is to make me look good. And at first I was really taken aback. I did not appreciate that. And then I thought about it, and he didn't mean it in a egocentric kind of way, because I realized he's right. Like, my job is to make sure he's covered. And in this case, I was like, my first job, administrative assistant, to make sure his phones were answered, to make sure people knew where he was if he had to get in touch with them. But it's the same thing. Like, I think agencies, I'm here because I'm doing a case study workshop to help people write better EPI submissions. And I talk about the story that you tell in a case study. And I say that an agency, in that story, if you look, any good story has the hero and a guide. And the agency is always the guide. Your client is the hero. So it's that kind of thing too. Agencies, this role to make our clients succeed in within the abilities of their experience and skills.
I think that's so true. And I think about it in that relationship, your job as someone who's trying to build that relationship is to ask questions, to listen, and then to feed it back. But with the client as the hero, I think it's so important. And sometimes we forget that.
Yeah. So let's tie this back into thriving and the initiatives of the ICA that are helping agencies build thriving cultures. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there. And then I'm going to ask you a little bit more about business development after that.
Yeah, I do a lot of work with account leadership groups. It sometimes spills into other departments, which is fabulous. I love speaking to the entire agency, but I talk a lot about that client-facing person and their role in the client-agency relationship. For me, it's devolved a little bit over the decades. That strategy maybe has had something to do with that, where account service or account leadership, whatever you want to call it, has lost their way a little bit. Procurement has really pushed back on account leadership functions. And I do a lot of work with agencies to try and build that up, build up that confidence, understand what their role is from a partnership perspective, but also their role in sales, and that they're there to sell. To your point, we need new business development. We're always going to need new business development. Hand in hand with that is growing the clients that we have already.
Yeah, we were talking again right before we came on live. We were talking about the organic versus new or unidentified new business. And you jokingly said that you wanted to talk, well, not jokingly, you said you wanted to talk more about organic new business. And then you jokingly said, that's not good for your business. And I said, no, but new business will always be there. But organic, like, my role is to also allow agencies to thrive. And if you can grow primarily through a smart organic new business program, then go for it. But agencies don't. So why do you think that is? Or they don't always, not all of them.
I don't know the reason for that. And a lot of what I've been talking to agencies about recently is account planning. Now, the way I look at account planning is how you have to plan to get in and have those conversations, even with your existing client. Building the structures, the frameworks, just the plan for how it's going to be done.
Right.
In the same way that you would build a campaign strategy, or in the same way that you'd build a strategy for what's our new business going to look like, who are those brands that we're going to go after, what industries or categories or new work do we want to focus on, to have that same rigor and structure on going into our existing clients and simply asking the question, how can I help?
Right. And so what are some of the ways they could apply rigor around that, specifically if they were to, like, if you guys were going to go back after this call and talk to your team, I'm like, all right, here's what we're going to do for organic. What would be some of the things you would recommend they do?
That's such a great question. I think starting to explore and understand where your relationships are and how you can use your existing network.
The people, who you know, who they know.
All about people. And when I say network, I don't mean a big conglomerate network agency, but who in the people that you know, your freelancers, your associates, different people that you know in the industry, and how do they have links? Do you know all of their links? Do you know where they connect in with the brand? How does everybody in your agency connect in with the brand?
Right.
Even just doing a rigorous exercise of mapping your relationships can really open up. Yeah, it can be like a Pandora's box.
I want to take a step back, and a couple of comments have come in. One from Cam Landell. Hi, Cam. It's nice to see you here. And Cam asks a pretty broad question. What is organic new biz or organic new business? So I don't want to, I realize that we were probably taking or making some assumptions.
Right.
How do you define organic new business? It would be interesting to see if our definitions are the same.
Okay, so let's see. It's test Leah Power. So organic new business, from my perspective, is when you have an existing relationship with a brand.
Someone's already paying you for something.
Yes, and it's really, when I think about it, it's at the client level. Do you have a relationship with that client? Yeah. Maybe you're working on a specific brand and you'd like another brand.
Yeah.
And the organic new business is maybe expanding the work that you're doing. I'm already doing this work, but I'd like to do it for another brand or another group. Maybe you work with marketing and you think, I could work with communications.
Right. Or we're doing only search SEO. We should be doing more digital marketing.
Exactly. So it's taking an existing relationship and expanding it so that you can do more work, different work, innovative work. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can look at organic. It's not just that one, I produce 30-second spots, so I'll do that for everybody.
Yeah.
It's really expanding from there. Whereas new business is more about kind of that agency search. I've been given an RFP. I've been notified about a search, and the only way for me to get in there,
right?
Although Blair would have another conversation with that. Blair Enns would say something different. But the only way to get that work is to do an agency search.
Right. Well, someone else, Chip Griffin, commented that he feels like, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, that there's an excitement around winning new business. And then Lisa Spielman sent in another comment that, which I also think is true, that there's the excitement of winning new business, being put on a pitch, and then counter that with sometimes, especially if it's the account leads, the account managers, who are the ones who are tasked with asking for the business, they're just not equipped, and they feel like they're being pushy, or it's sort of this naked way for the agency to make more money. Which I suppose in its basest form it is. Like, look, agencies are in business. There's no reason why an agency shouldn't have a thriving business. The more thriving your agency is, the more you can service, the better you can service your clients.
I mean, I don't think our clients are kind of shy about the fact that they're supposed to sell products and services. Yeah. And we as well should not be shy. But I think that comment about, afraid to being seen as pushy is really valid. So you do have to have those conversations and that's why I say in a structured, strategic way. How am I going in? Where's the opportunity? It's a lot of upfront work. And again, I liken it to campaign strategy, because of course the strategy department, they have a framework, they do a ton of research, they find their insights, and they do a heck of a lot of work before they actually take it back to the client. And I think organic is the same way, because you don't want to tick off your client. You want to make sure that you are making inroads with other brands in a respectful way.
Yeah.
And you want actually the client to help you do that.
Yeah.
And don't be pushy.
I think, so we're talking about some frameworks. I think one of the really simple things, so there's the like looking at who you know, your network within that client, or maybe ancillary or adjacent networks. But I think there's also even just a certain amount of regularity, whether it's probably not weekly, could be monthly, maybe more likely quarterly, where that account person can sit down with someone with a little bit more authority and stature, their boss maybe, who they can go through that the higher authority can sort of walk them through, like who are you talking to, what are you talking about. And I think a lot of it is identifying the value, right? So the way to move away from the feeling that you're like just asking for more money is to transition it to a value conversation. We see an opportunity, that's basically the conversation with the client. We see an opportunity for you to do better, to make inroads here, for you to make more money. We think we can help you to do that. Would you like to have a conversation? Now, I think that takes a certain amount of sophistication and experience. So if that account manager is talking to someone who has that experience and sophistication, and that person can help sort of guide them and push them, and we're doing it on a regular basis, then I think that really helps. I think sometimes, weirdly enough, agencies can also be very territorial, even within the agency. The person in charge of the group maybe doesn't want to give up their connections, even though they probably should be sharing more. Have you seen that?
And not everybody's good at it.
Not everybody's good at it.
Right? Yeah. There are different skill sets that everybody has. Some people are really fabulous at making strong relationship connections with a client, and other people have different skills that they bring to the account team and the agency. And so it's finding those and helping them. I like what you've said, which is you do have to have someone who maybe intuitively understands how to do that to help foster it. Yeah. See it in maybe some more junior folks and help that, come alive within the account group.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. So a little bit of a framework, a little bit of consistency, maybe a little bit more mentorship around organic new growth. And now look, just like your strategy department, we've just helped you put a process in place. You're welcome. But yes, organic new. And I think the other thing too is just having the regular conversations going on the opposite end. I'm sometimes appalled when a couple of things can happen. Either the agency owner, the agency leadership isn't in touch with the client as much as they could be, or sometimes you do run into other dangerous situations where the account manager has too much control. And then you have a situation where they end up leaving the agency and taking the account with them. So that's also where I think it's really important, if you're the account leader who is just hoping that your team will go out and bring in more organic new business, that's incentive for you to stay involved, because you have to, for as long as you are running that agency, you've got to have an important role with the client, I think.
I would say the number one thing with organic is that it's collaborative. Yeah. If you're thinking that it's one person on that client's responsibility to, expand the agency's engagement, that person's being set up for some failure. So it really is collaborative. It's a group effort. Everybody has to chip in. And I love your idea about, consistency and making sure that you're having those conversations. Something else that we've spoken about is client segmentation. Right? Yeah. Understanding where that existing client and that work fits within your agency. What is it bringing to the table? I have a little expression that's, if you can Google it, that's not the client segmentation that I'm talking about. That's all great stuff. Like, you want to know what category it's in and who your consumer is and who you're selling to. But understanding from a strategic perspective, from that business perspective, what's this client do for you? What does it allow? Is there a strategic opportunity to go into new types of work for you?
Right.
And so you're maybe willing to give up a little bit on some other areas.
If they could be like a stepping stone to get you into a different category.
Absolutely. And I think from the perspective of making sure that everybody in the agency understands what that client brings to the table for you as an agency and why we're all working on this, what a fabulous kind of conversation to have with everybody so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just look at another question, because Ken then asked, how do you manage pursuing organic new biz when client internal agency is doing the work? Oh, that might have to be for another LinkedIn Live.
That's a fabulous question.
Yeah.
What a great question, because clients, listen, in-house agencies are not new. They've been around forever under different names, right? It started with brands just putting in a Mac producer or Mac production artist into their marketing group to get those coupons out all the time, right? So it's not new, it's expanded. And I think we have to deal with it the same way. What parts are we okay with going into in-house?
Yeah.
And what parts are we not okay? And again, getting back to that word, advocating, just standing up for the agency's value, knowing what it is that you bring to the table from that value perspective and retaining that. But yeah,
and there are probably a lot of specifics around the situation that we don't have the benefit of knowing. But I do think it goes back to, can we add value that the internal agency is not fulfilling? And so if so, that's where let's make that pitch. Let's get the client in a Zoom meeting or over lunch, and let's talk about how we could potentially expand that in-house relationship. I think sometimes also, I know this is going back a little bit, few years, when in-house agencies really became sort of that force to be reckoned with for agents, for third-party agencies. But can you, usually I find in-house agencies, they reach a limit more easily. Like there's often capacity issues, or at least initially when in-house agencies were becoming more popular, there's just the figuring out stuff. So I knew a lot of agencies who had a thriving practice of just helping their clients set up in-house agencies. So sometimes it's a little counterintuitive. You would think, well, that's sort of sabotaging your business. In fact, it's just making you more valuable resource. You're helping the client. You got your clients back.
I agree. And I think it's almost like taking one step back to take two steps forward. Is there a way that you can stay close to that in-house agency and of course the marketing team to say, how can I help? And constantly putting yourself in that position where you are there to make the product better.
Right.
And you're there to make the marketing team the hero. Right? Yeah. That's your job.
Hero of the story.
Yeah.
This always happens. 30 minutes goes by like bing. We've had thank you everyone for a lot of really great comments. Before we sign off, thank you also, Leah, for being here. Is there anything that else that you would really love the folks watching this and then watching the recording to know about the ICA, or any piece of advice before we go?
Well, I do a lot of work with procurement, and so I do have a podcast that I have been working on diligently with Blair Enns called 20%, and there's a reason why it's called 20%, and that's to do with those wonderful conditioning statements that procurement love to use with us. Magically, we're always 20% higher than everybody else when it comes time to evaluating and negotiating our price at the end. It's magic how that happens, but we have really fabulous conversations with
super smart
folks from agency, procurement, and marketing. It's that three-legged stool. Listen, folks, procurement's not going anywhere. And I do sometimes have agencies say to me, oh, procurement's just for new business. That's just in the search. And I'm like, oh boy, that's not true.
Interesting. Yeah. So
they are there throughout the process. They are there. You may not see them. They're there. And my point is, you should see them. So get a relationship with your procurement person. Again, as I said at the beginning, you're going to have some that are more tactical, others that are more strategic, but have conversations, understand them.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah.